Now that we got everything straightened out, we've got our homemade plank. We use this plank on just about anything over 48 wide. So once we get into like 60 wides or this 72 wide, we're gonna use the plank to put our steel up by the roof so we can work a lot more efficiently, safely. So it'll be the first time lifting it up with the G9. See how it goes. Welcome back to episode 6, Building the Dream. We've got a lot of roof to put on and roof trim, so let's get right into it, shall we? Got to get that curve in there, otherwise you can damage the sheets. Then once you get them to curve, you can probably lift 100-foot sheets. I'm about 2.5 feet over, Zach.
Yeah.
So this bundle, 2,378 pounds, 39-foot, 2-inch pieces. It's 28 of them, so this will do the whole one side of the roof. Once we get that steel on the plank, it's a lot easier to move around the job site. As you can see, now we're just forking that plank with the telehandler, and we had a little bit of a tough time because we had some trees in our way. That meant we had to get creative. Thankfully, that JLG G9 telehandler, like most telehandlers, has that crab crawl function. So not only can you turn your front 2 wheels one way, but it will also turn your rear 2 wheels in the same way so that you can kind of maneuver your machine in a totally different way, and it allowed us to get this steel in at an angle. It's definitely important to make sure that steel is perpendicular to the building so that as we slide those 40-foot sheets up the roof, they come right off the pile nice and clean and they don't roll off the edge, because if they do, they're hard to handle and they can get damaged. So this is something we've learned over a lot of experience. Getting ready on the roof, and we've got these trims here. This is a custom trim. It's kind of like a residential eave flash. It's got a little kick out for water if it's coming off the roof and it makes its way back down. It'll come kick out. Our fascia is going to tuck up under here real nice, and you can see here there's a little bit of a hem. So what we like to do, I like to just take my snips, come in there with a little notch. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this guy up. Stick my knife in there. Don't cut yourself. Be very careful. I'm just going to take it. I'm going to slide it right over there. That keeps that somewhat nice and tight. It'll look like one piece from the ground. That's the goal. We're just throwing some shingle nails here in the top. Now when laying out the roof and getting it going, the first couple sheets are going to be the vital ones. Those are the ones that kind of determine the rest of the build. So when we get our building square, our goal is obviously to get it perfect. But when you start putting these first few sheets on, that's when you find out just how good it is. So this is a great example of where not always does the tape measure tell the truth, because without going into a really long explanation, which maybe you guys want, I don't know if I'm ready to really go through it because I just want to get work done. We're getting to the end of our day and we got a lot of roof to lay out. But we check square, but because we have overhangs that are out past the building, there can be slight inconsistencies.
the square was not where we wanted it. We put the first couple sheets on, and what I mean by that is we always measure 1.5 inches off the face of our fascia. Well, there's always a lot of ins and outs in the middle of our tails, so sometimes we always check our tails to be in a line, but the 2x can still do this. That's because lumber sucks. Well, when I come in here, I gotta put my tape measure just like this. It's just a hair off of 1.5 inches. So what we did was we went down and we pulled that peak chain back. And we did that because I know these tails are all laser straight. We put the laser on them. Those were money. We checked our square up off the peak, but because there could be some minor inconsistencies here in the tail or way up there at the peak, we put it where we thought it was supposed to be based on the tape measure, but clearly we had to move it back. So I went down there, I pulled the peak chain back, and I think we got it. So now it's time to get back on it.
Now I'm going to go ahead and fasten the good rib side of the steel, which that's the lap that goes over the last sheet. I'm always going to fasten that first, and then I'm going to come to the leading edge, and I'm going to check it to be that 1.5 inches that I'm looking for. And on this one, I told Greg to go ahead and take it back, which meant that it was a little bit over 1.5 inches. So once he moves it back, it's at 1.5 inches. I go ahead and fasten it to the bottom fascia board. And once that is all done, Greg can move that sheet back to the designated mark up at the very top, which is never probably more than 1/2 inch. And on 40 foot of sheets, 1/2 inch at the top really doesn't amount to anything. But what it does is it keeps that fascia board straight. So in between those 8-foot center trusses, you can imagine that a 2x6 can have some, ins and outs and can kind of not be straight. I mean, it's wood, it's not perfect. But by measuring every sheet to have that 1.5 inch overhang and making sure that our sheets lap correctly and in line with each other on the bottom, it will force that board into being straight. But the other side of the coin is that you have to have a square peak to your fascia, otherwise this method does not work and you're going to really fight it, and it's probably going to make your fascia have a ton of waves in it, in and out. So spend the time, make sure your peak is square to your fascia and your walls are plumb. Like, those things are going to be the most important to ensure a nice straight roof line. Another thing I will note, and I've had some people comment on it, you shouldn't use an impact on your screws. So the goal is, I like the impact for setting the sheets where I want them, but when we go back and actually do most of the roof screwing, we'll use the Makita or DeWalt VersaClutches, and those aren't going to impact, but they're going to be a clutch driver to help us set the correct depth every time. And they do a really good job, but they're just not great for placement of steel. So an impact really does work well for that. And, if you're careful, it works just fine.
One of the things that people always ask is whether or not we punch our roof steel. No, we don't. What we do is we just make a little pencil mark next to each purlin, and then we eyeball them straight. So if you look down this, it's not laser straight, but it's really quite good. And you don't even really notice the staggers. So this line is actually a straight line. That's the line that is defined by the outside edge of our post. But I don't think anybody's going to really notice the stagger line. And it makes for a stronger connection, I think, than doing a continuous purlin. So almost got this side of the roof done. Sun's setting over there. It's getting later in the day. It's looking pretty good.
In regards to the screw lines, I'm always fighting the desire for perfection versus the need for efficiency and practicality. So it's impractical to punch this steel due to the nature of the installation. If you're doing a really small roof, you can get away with it because you can handle the sheets. But if you have punch rows going through the steel, as you're handling it and trying to install it, you will scratch up the roof. So it's just impractical. Now the next thing is, well, why don't you snap lines? Well, to be honest, a snap line of chalk across the rib does not ensure a perfect screw line either, because you still have to put the screw in the flat next to the snap line. And when you're up there screwing thousands of screws, you're probably not going to be exactly in line with that snap line. And then you've got chalk that you have to deal with. So for us, marking every sheet is efficient. It does a really good job. On a building this size, I actually don't recall missing any screws anywhere. Now, occasionally when you're going, you come to a spot where you've got a transition in your purlins. It has happened before where you just keep screwing and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I missed wood. I mean, it's totally noticeable. It's not like you can't know it and you're just going to miss it and not remember. You're going to know it. You're going to feel it. And what we have to do then is either add a block of wood underneath, fasten it to the purlin and extend that lap, or sometimes it's actually close enough that you can still get wood by angling your screw a little bit. But, we don't like to do it that way. It's nicer to add a piece of wood and then get your screw in there.
All right, so since we spent time on the other side getting it straight, square, it was actually pretty easy over here. We put one chain way up there in the middle, and that straightened it out really well. I got one purlin here that's just a little bit in. That could be a number of things, most likely. It's hard to say, but we'll just have to fix that one by tapping it out a little bit on the fascia. And then when you look at our side fascia, it's actually really, really close. Now, the thing to remember is that when we do this, we're doing one side off of the laser. The other side, it just kind of is what it is. We could adjust accordingly, and we could slide our tails in and out to the laser, and I don't know why we don't do that. But typically what we do is we just measure our 2-foot overhang off of the post here, and that gives us our overhang. Now, if there's a big discrepancy in our truss, as in maybe one of them comes out 1/2 inch long, 1/2 inch short, you're gonna see it. But this actually looks pretty good, so we're gonna be good to roof. Got to put a little filler block in here to continue this screw line, and yeah, we should be good. Got another nice day. Got to take advantage of it. It could rain or be windy tomorrow.
With that being said, we had a great day. The weather was gorgeous. There was a breeze, but it wasn't affecting our steel, so that is always nice. And, whenever I do the roofing, it's kind of like once you're set up, once you're going, it's the same old, same old. I'm not going to sit here and bore you guys with a 30-minute video of running steel sheet after steel sheet.
Good? Oh, yeah. That line is just a guide for my soffit. One thing we try to do is, you'll notice if you look into this area, there's a vented soffit in here. This is a solid soffit. Our goal is to reduce the amount of air infiltration through a vented gable soffit. We don't want the wind coming in the soffit and going up to the ridge. We want it to be drawn from the eave up. I'll show you how I clean up this detail here on the soffits, where our gable soffit comes into our eave soffit, and what we do to correct this and make this look all pretty. What I'm doing there is I'm marking 3 inches up, 1 foot in, so that I can get a 3/12 pitch cut on this piece. But I need something flat, Greg. Long, hard, flat. This trim will work. Nice straight edge of sorts. Okay, and then I'm also going to measure back to my soffit line, which is going to be about right here is what I figured. Two-foot soffit. I don't cut it exactly at 2 foot, so it's not tight in there. With any luck, this will fit in there and cover this up so that way you get no birds. We're going to tuck this under our outside fascia. We'll throw a couple nails here, or just a nail really is all we need. And so now when we run this outside steel, we'll put our piece of corner trim, we'll come up into this channel here, into this channel here, and this is going to be nice and clean. I'm not a fan of I think they call them birds boxes that come out here all the way, where the eave soffit is continued out flat and then boxed over. I don't like that. This is much more aesthetically pleasing to me. Now we'll put our fascia on. So on all of our gables, our fascia is a 3.5 inch post trim, and for the first piece, all I'm going to do is cut a 3/12 pitch. I don't know if I like this, Craig. Trying out this tethered drill, so it won't drop on anybody's head, but it's kind of cumbersome, if I'm going to be honest. Which I'm always honest, Craig. You know that. Okay. Oh, there's no freaking thing, Craig. Make sure we're lined up nice on the end. We're going to come right about to the middle. Always double check. Make sure you like everything. Here with our fascia lap, what we're going to do is we're going to come in, we're going to cut a notch out, going back about 1.5 inches, and then we're going to take the piece that is going to lap it, and we're going to open up this hem right here. You can just stick your knife blade in there and just open it up. That is so when we lap it, we're going to stick that right over the hem. Oh. I don't know if I'm gonna get used to this drill, Greg. Fast. Probably should turn it down. When doing metal trims, it's always nice to suck your screw in, but then release it, take the pressure off of the steel, and then bring it back in snug tight. Now this is important. You want to make sure that you use the right colored snip so that it pushes down the material the correct way so that it gives you the right miter that you're after. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to connect these dots. So what I mean is I want this face to be on top of this face, so I'm going to push down one side while pushing up this side. So then, one more snip. I need reds. Get that out of there. Once that cut is done, see how that'll just slide right in there? And this 312 pitch that we put on is gonna give us our nice miter. I'm not even going to check it, I just assume it's right. So once we snap this line over here and get it where it's going to go, that just created our miter. Soffit, boom. So I'm putting together our last piece on the gable of our fascia. Once I get this in, on this end, you see what we do is, I always measure it to go, I notch it out right where our bend is on the peak, but then I leave this long on this side, and I'll show you why. So now when I do the other piece, and I'm always thinking about where the visual overlap is gonna be, I think most people, or this customer anyway, is going to come from this side, which means I want this trim overlapping this side's trim so that you don't see the joint, even though we're about 30 feet up in the air. So once I lap it, I'm going to come up here, and that's going to go right there. Unfortunately, we don't have a soffit. Our soffit rib did not line in the exact center. That's just by dimension. We can't really control that. So I like to just throw a screw as close to, you know, it's not exactly center, but that's pretty good. So this is a gable trim, and all I'm going to do is I mark 3 and 4 inches because we use a 5-inch gutter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be cutting out and notching where our gutter kind of sits in on our gable trim. So I'm just using the speed square. I'm just going to make a 1-inch line, and then I got a 3-inch and a 4-inch line. Now here I'm going to take actually I want to use my reds. First I'm going to cut this guy off. This one's not as particular on how nice of a clean cut it is until you get to this. Then you want the face to be nice.
Of course. Everybody on Saturday, I'm picking you up on it. Tanner's dad is the model of biker that you're looking at? No, who said that? No one. I don't know. I just don't know who. I'm just excited about it. I'm excited about this new venture in my life. That could, I mean, honestly, it could take me away from the industry. Just hitting the trail and hitting the highway. If I get fired because you join a biker gang, I'm gonna be real mad. Really mad at me. All right, welcome to the show. Good times.
Take your fingers, bend that little tab in, and then you're going to take this guy. If you're worried about getting this nice clean bend, you can use a set of benders, but when you do it enough, you kind of get pretty good at that. Now we're just going to basically, that little bend over tab was 1 inch, and I did it 1 inch because my rib is 7/8, and I know it just barely grabs the face of our roof. And then I'm just going to line this all up, make sure it's nice and square to the roof structure, and then I'll screw it in. So this is our gable for the peak, and I marked the 312. But I'm not going to cut the whole thing. This is very similar to our fascia. I'm going to just cut this bottom part. You always got to make sure is that before you fasten it, that you get it very close to the position that you want it in, because as you go up or down, it can change this point right here. So we're going to put it here on our point. We're going to get it to where we like it. And then we'll put a fastener in the top edge. If you look down that line, you can kind of see it. We don't have it all fastened, but so far we have only worked on this line here. We'll have to go through and raise up some of those joints down there. So in putting these two gable trims together, this side I marked my 312, but I left this material here. This one I'm going to mark for 312 again. 312 being the pitch of my roof. So once I've got my 3/12 pitch cut, I'm just going to slide it over top of this, and I'm going to make sure that I like how this all goes together. And put a screw on the other side. There's a couple things I'm not exactly excited about. One being that the location of these screws was, unfortunately, you can see where the ribs lined up. Now, the only real way to take care of that is to run the soffit from the peak down, but that's almost not efficient either, so yeah, I'm not really sure about that.
Now that we've got our gable trims on both ends of the building, we've got our soffit fascia all done, it's time for ridge cap. And, you know, typically we're going to just lay out the ridge by eye, get a nice straight line, and screw it off. Well, I just love playing with new tools. This layout station is still impressing me with how efficient and accurate it is. So I thought, what if I go ahead and set it up on one end of the gable, go to the other end, use that receiver to lock on that constant line from end to end, and then just use it to put our ridge cap on. I thought it was a great idea. It actually worked really well. I don't think I'll use it on like a 30-foot long building or even probably a 48-foot long building, because we're only talking a few pieces of ridge cap. But for this longer building where we've got 8 pieces to put on and things can get off, I think it was a great use of the tool. And I'm always thinking about, you know, what can I do next? What can I make that is even better or straighter or efficient? And I think tools are the answer. I think the knowledge of how to do something might change a little here or there, but I think tools are what makes your job easier. So never be afraid to invest in a tool that's going to make your job easier, more efficient, and in the end probably a little bit better than the old way of doing things. So hope you guys liked this episode. I know roofing gets kind of boring. I wanted to show you a little bit more intricate detail on the soffit fascia, how that gets done. And next video, I do believe we will be getting into steel going up on the building. So definitely stay tuned. Hit that subscribe button if you already haven't. And if you did, I appreciate it. Make sure that bell is also hit so you get notified when the videos go live. And I will catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks for the support. And feel free to leave me a comment down below or questions. I'm always available. So if you don't already, check out my Instagram. I'm a lot more heavy on Instagram, and I do a lot there, and you can always DM me if you've got questions. So we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks a lot.